studio, and this time we're going to talk about my photo area, and that's where I'm standing right now. So if you have any questions, we welcome them. I can't promise I can answer every single question, but I will answer the ones that I can, or just give you my opinion if that's all it takes. So here we are in my photo corner of my studio. This actually takes up almost a full quarter of my studio. And the reason for that is because I have, almost from the very beginning, if you watched any of my other videos, you will know that I realized my photos are extremely important to the website. Since you as a customer only get to see photos of my products, they need to be the best photos possible that I can bring to you. So over the years, I have spent quite a bit of time learning to take good pictures, acquiring good photo equipment. Probably my biggest investment in my embroidery business is, I think, my photography equipment. All of my gear is probably, it probably adds up to more than even my embroidery software, my 2 multi-needle machines, and the various products I've even supplies that I've purchased, whether it be stabilizers, threads, everything that has to do with embroidery. If you add it all up, I think my photo gear will have a much higher total than all that even. That doesn't mean that the most expensive equipment is going to get you the best pictures. I really had to work hard to learn how to use my equipment. But from the very first time that I ordered a DSLR camera, as opposed to my little point and shoot that I started with, actually I started with a scanner. I would scan in my stitch outs and get the picture that the scanner would provide for me and clean that up and put that on the website. But those little images just didn't really do any justice to the design. So eventually I was able to purchase a digital camera. And from the very beginning, I decided I was going to learn to use that camera on manual mode. When you purchase a digital camera, you can set it on manual mode, you can set it on aperture priority, shutter speed priority. So there are different settings for the camera, but manual means you make all the decisions on lighting and shutter speeds, ISO, everything. And I really wanted to challenge myself and make myself learn to do it that way, because every project requires something different. And I didn't want the camera making those decisions for me. And so that's, fast forward to today, that's where I'm at. And I wanted to show you how I set this up. It used to be that if I had to take a picture of a project that was more than just a stitched out design, like a tote bag or a table runner, something that required a little more space and maybe a background, it was just so frustrating to walk around the house looking for a clean wall. And these are some tips that I can give you if you're taking, even if you're not a digitizer, maybe you just want to show off your project. You want to find a clean background so that when you take your photo, you don't have you know, a refrigerator in the background, or your bed, or a bedpost, or you know, something really distracting that's you know, your couch and a lamp table, and those things are distracting from your subject. So even though whatever photo you can get is a good photo, because that's better than no photo, if you want to take a decent photo of your project, set it up on something where it's a clean background, set it away from the wall so that you focus on your project, and the background just kind of blurs out of the way, and it'll give you a much nicer picture to show your pillow or whatever it is or if you're doing a table runner or a tablecloth, you know, pull the chairs away from the table and get rid of any clutter you see in your viewfinder when you're looking at the corner of your tablecloth or the top of your tablecloth. You know, set it up kind of pretty, and you can look through the viewfinder and see how you want to frame it. And if, you know, there's somebody's shoe in the background by the couch, you take that out of the way and just declutter your composition. So that'll make nicer photos, especially when you're trying to show something off. You want your photo to look really nice. So I set this up because it was so difficult to go around the house finding a clean wall where I could get a clean shot of my project without, like I said, the couch in the background, somebody's stack of books, or yesterday's mail, or that kind of thing. And also the lighting. Wherever you go, unless you're using a flash, but that's a whole other set of problems if you're using a flash, because it'll cast really dark, hard-edged shadows. And so then you have a whole new set of challenges when you're using a flash. So I had determined that whenever I had my own studio, I was going to have a large enough section where I could set up a background and I wouldn't have to worry about all those household items behind my project. So here we are. I've got a floor cloth here that's printed like a patio with moss. I've used that a lot for certain things, but the floor is not as important as my background. So I've got a white background for just neutral photos. If I want to get creative, I do have another backdrop that has kind of a paisley design, soft colors on it. I've got these bars that I actually ordered this from a photography studio supply place. All these bars came together on these brackets. These brackets are heavy-duty iron brackets that hold the bars up. And originally, if you watched my other videos, you'll know I mentioned my photo studio was in the opposite corner of the room. But I moved it over here because there's a big window over here that helps me to light my subjects better. And there's nothing in the way to cast shadows between the window and my subject. Whereas when I had it over there, I had a cutting table in the middle, I had other things that were in the way, and the light from the window had to travel way across the room to help me give me that ambient light. And I depend a lot on the available light. I do boost my light once in a while with handheld lights. I don't use flash like I used to because, like I said, that presents a whole other bunch of challenges. And I used to do it with flash, but I found some really nice lights that would help boost my ambient light without causing those hard shadows that I really don't like at all. And so I hardly ever use my flashes anymore. So I've got this window that helps me when the sun is really bright and dashes of light are coming through the window. I close my shades, which are translucent. It softens the light and gives me quite a bit of ambient light. And then I'll use my light boosters to light my subject better. The rest of my light comes from my camera settings. I increase my ISO if I need to. Sometimes I use 400, sometimes 640. Also, if usually when I'm taking photos of a project, I do have my camera on a tripod. And I don't use the tripod when I'm doing photo shoots with the kids, with the models, because they tend to do their thing. I can't always pose them, and if they're fidgeting or moving a little too much or whatever, this is just not a really practical. It would be ideal if they could be absolutely still, but your focal point changes, and maybe you need to raise the camera a little, lower the camera. Just the position of the camera is easier to move if you're hand holding it than having it on a tripod. That's really ideal if you're doing adults or somebody who's just sitting absolutely still. But when you're following children, especially when they're younger and toddlers and doing their own thing, you're just all over the place and just following them and trying to catch good shots as they move. So a tripod's not practical for that. But for my projects, which don't move, they sit exactly where I leave them and wait for me to take the shot, I use a tripod. Right now it is set up pointed at the floor. So the camera is, I'll show you this way. The camera is set up on this ball head right here. The lens is pointed directly at the floor because I need a squared shot of, I do this for the alphabets or for a regular stitched out design, because it's the easiest way to get a squared, straight on shot of a stitch out. If I don't balance my camera, I use this leveler. So it's got two sets of bubbles because the camera can move this way and it can move this way. So I put it right here on the hot shoot, which is where you normally mount a flash. And I just make sure that it's level. I can either level it with the legs or level it by loosening this, and it'll move the camera around, and then I lock it in place. That gives me a square, straight on shot to the floor, and on the floor is where I have my embroidered item, my flat piece of fabric. And in this case, I usually set this up for the alphabets. And like I said, when I have a regular stitch, a regular embroidery design, I do that. If I'm doing lace, I'll do something different. The setup will be a little different. But that's the typical setup for designs. Now I do use a remote. And these are, this may sound boring, but someday you might find this useful to know when, because if you have children or grandchildren, you are probably taking pictures of them and would like to maybe improve your pictures. I'm not talking to professional photographers here because I don't really consider myself a professional photographer. I have much to learn, but I will share what I have learned. So, and if, like I said, if you have any questions, please ask me. So I have this set up right here so that when I take a picture, I use this remote, which is a wireless remote. This is and I always leave my strap on my camera because when I'm carrying my camera around, I always put this on my shoulder. Don't ever carry your camera like this with the strap hanging down, because I'll tell you from experience, years ago with my first camera, I was holding it like that and I went to stand up, and I was up outside near our raised wood deck in the backyard, and I went to stand up and the strap caught on the corner of the deck. So when I went like that, it yanked the camera out of my hand, went crashing to the cement ground, and damaged the lens that I had on it. The camera was fine, but I'm just saying, don't walk around with your camera and the strap hanging down, because you will snag it on something and it'll yank it right out of your hand. So I do leave the strap on because I do keep it on my shoulder. I don't want to drop my camera by mistake as I'm walking around. So the setup, this is my receiver for the wireless remote. So I strapped it on here with a piece of Velcro because I don't want it dangling in front of my lens here. This has to be the remote has to be pointed at this little receiver end of the, now this has this little bracket on it because it can go on the hot shoot, which is again where the flash goes here. But if it's on there, it's either pointing up to the ceiling or it's pointing at the floor. So when I'm trying to take the shot, I would have to get under it somehow to, I don't know why they did it that way. I suppose if the camera is sitting straight up and you're across the room, that would work, but that would be the only instance where that would be practical. So I strap it to the leg of my tripod and I just point it where I need it to go. And I turn this on, and then up here I have my focal point, but this also, when you press it halfway down, it causes, just like other cameras, halfway down on the trigger will achieve focus, and then all the way down takes the shot. So I have it set up like this because I want my pictures to be as sharp as possible. So, which is why you have a tripod. You want, that's one of the reasons. Your tripod keeps the camera absolutely still. It's not, you know, relying on you to hold it steady. It's being held steady by an absolutely stable tripod because nobody's touching it. So I use the remote because if I was to release the shutter, if I was to shoot the picture with my hand, that moves the camera. No matter how still it is, that will cause vibration in the camera, just the act of pushing the button in on the camera. So I use my remote to take all my shots. Once in a while, I'll, if I'm in a hurry and this isn't plugged in because we just got back from a trip and I just set it up, and you probably don't notice the difference online. I see the difference when I see the original shot. So the sharper the better, but it may not be detectable between the pictures to you. I just want the absolute best possible shot I can get to begin with, and then I can work from there. So that's why I have it set up like that, so that I get the sharpest picture possible. Also, when your shutter speed is low, this is an 85 1.4 lens, so I can get my shutter speed down to 100 or a little less. That's pretty slow. So the lower the shutter speed, the more light comes in. Because my room is darker, I'm allowing more light into the barrel of the lens, and you having to come up with more light for my subject. But because the shutter speed is so slow, shutter is when it opens, takes the picture, and shuts. And the faster it does it, the less light it allows to come through. So the slower it goes, the more movement in the camera. And if you're holding a camera that's moving, that's got a shutter speed that low, it just has all that much more opportunity for the picture to become blurred because it's going so slow. It's just not opening and closing fast enough to override whatever motion you're causing by hand holding your camera. So those are just a few little tips. Let's see. So my setup is this for regular design, straight on the floor. If this is level, then my design, when I crop it, my design should look pretty much right on my screen, so my lines aren't skewed. So a square will actually look like a square, not a what do you call those, trapezoids or whatever, those geometrical, you know, unequal sides, you know what I mean. So my square will actually look squared. And sometimes it's not exact, but it's to the visual, just to the eye, it looks really good, and that's what I'm after, get as close as I can. So if I have a project that's not going to be done on the floor, and I usually keep that to the side so it's out of my way. I will set something up. I've got some props. I've got little chests, little chairs. I've got several different things I could set things on. If I need a backdrop other than these, I do have other backdrops put away that go on the bars, and I'll tell you why we have these bars hanging in different distances from the wall. Originally, I had the brackets set up so that all the backdrops are flat against the wall on that corner, and the system has a really heavy-duty, right-angled iron piece that screws into a corner, into an inside corner. So you have this side bolted onto the wall this way, and this side of it is bolted onto the wall this way. And the bracket it has a hinge so that when you put all the bars into it, they swing out independently. So that you could have, and I had all my backdrops layered from top to bottom. Each bar is a little higher than the one under it. And so you would have your outermost backdrop would be hanging on the top one. And if you need that backdrop, you swing it out to reveal the one underneath it, and like that. So that was really, really nice because you didn't have to rehang anything, you didn't have to remove anything, you just swung them out of the way to reveal the backdrop that you wanted to use, that I wanted to use at the time. So, but because we had to move everything to this side, we weren't able to do that because if we had put it in that corner, the backdrops would have swung out and covered the window and caused a lot of darkness. So I realized that wasn't going to work. There's no right angle on this side, so we couldn't have it swinging out this way, which would have been nice. And we probably could have built something to create a right angle right there, but we found another solution without going to those extremes. So we put, there's a second way of hanging these backdrops with the system that was provided, is to just hang them on the wall flat. And I did put away the other backdrops, but it would be very simple to bring one out and put it over the top of a bar as needed. These bars, Gary created this pulley system for me because one of the things I was having trouble with was being able to hang fabrics or something a little more creative if I needed it, like wispy fabrics and things, if I wanted to do something that was not just a plain backdrop in the background. So I asked him to make me this pulley system, and I'll show you how it works. So we have two bars on the pulley system right here, one in front and one in the back. The rest of the bars go against the wall on the hooks. Okay, so to lower this bar, sometimes I need, for example, scarves hanging behind a project because I want something soft and billowy and maybe pink, and I don't have a backdrop that looks like that. So hanging something like that just became such a hassle, especially when my project was near the floor. I didn't need something to hang from up here all the way to the floor. I just needed something down below. So here's what we do. So the pulleys support these bars that I can lower, and I do it carefully so I don't lose my derail my ropes up at the top. So this goes all the way to the floor almost, so that I can hang whatever I want at whatever height I need it. And I got these, let me tie this up so I can finish talking. And then I put these as the tail ends of my rope for grandchildren's safety. Don't want loops hanging all the way to the floor. Okay, so these bars are wrapped in the loop side of the Velcro because the backdrops have kind of a fleece backing on it. So the backdrops don't actually attach with clips or anything. You just drape them over the top of the bar and they stick. So that's how easy the backdrops work. But I can use this for my other ideas, which is if I need to hang scarves or fabrics or whatever it is I need to hang here. I made myself a dowel and wrapped it in the fluffy side of the Velcro so that I can lower both of these bars if I need to. So I not only have the ability to hang scarves or fabric from this bar or that bar, I can also hang in between, because when I stick this Velcro dowel on top of the bars, it just sticks. And I can just hang things in between if I need to, or put another bar across the top and create multi-dimensional backgrounds if I need to. And then to store it, I just leave it up here. But for hanging fabrics and scarves, I got these are just keychain type rings. And I don't lock them because I don't want to fight to open them up. And they don't hold anything heavy, so they work great. So I just open them, put them on here. Oops. I hang them on here, and they're available anytime I need them to clip fabrics to these paper clip clamps, and you can slide them anywhere on the bar. And I've got several of them, so I can do whatever I want. So I can, for example, let me grab something really quick. So, for example, I want to hang something like this behind my, let's say I want to do a little picture easel like you've seen with my fairy tales never get old, or once upon a time, or one of those framed pictures, and I put it on a little easel or something to show what you could do. I can hang, a few scarves behind it like that, and I can bring the bar low enough so that it'll actually be behind it, but I can just simply clamp it on here. These clamps are tight, so there. So if I need more than a couple of clamps, I have as many as I want to hold my piece. Or if I want it more billowy, I can do more. And I've got many scarves and things I can use. So, and I don't put the scarf directly on here because it does snag it. I don't want to totally damage these, even though they're not that special, but I don't want to destroy them for a photo shoot. So that's how this pulley system works. And then, like I said, I can bring in any of those backdrops that I have put away. They don't get wrinkled because it's kind of a fleece type of fabric that is made to, I've taken them on trips before, and I just fold them up, put them in the suitcase, open them up, and not a single wrinkle. So, but they're actual backdrops that are made not to wrinkle. And so this is my photo setup. If I want a neutral floor, I can pull the white backdrop out. Let me erase this. All right, so if I want a white floor, I can just roll this out farther if I need to. And one of the tricks to backdrops is don't put your subject too close to the back, because you want the backdrop to kind of fade out, to blur out when you take your picture. You don't want that to be part of your picture. And not only that, but the closer you get, the bigger the shadow, you know, the darker the shadow. You don't really want ugly shadows on your backdrop. It should be nice and clean. And all we have is just a couple of lights for lighting up the room so that I wouldn't be so dark when we do the video. But even with those lights, the shadows are pretty light. But the farther away you get, the more the backdrop sort of falls away and your subject becomes the most important thing. And then just a few tips on taking photos. Like I said, if you have children or grandchildren, you've probably been taking photos, especially since everybody has a camera in their phone. If you're taking photos of your children, think about getting on their level. So sometimes you see photos of the cutest child, and they look, but their bodies look a little bit odd because their head looks kind of big, and they kind of get smaller and smaller as you get down to the feet. That's because the picture was taken from above, and that distorts a person. So you're taking a picture of a child and they're looking up at you. Their head's going to look bigger than everything that's farthest from the lens. So by the time the camera captures their feet, they have little feet and they have a big head. So not only is that not the most attractive picture you were looking for, it's also not a good way to capture a child. So get down to their eye level and take the picture straight on. You're getting their true personality, and you're getting a much, much more attractive shot of your beautiful children. Let's see, what are some of the other... if you're using a digital camera, or a camera where you can set it up yourself, where you can set it on manual, I would challenge you to learn how to use your camera, because when the camera is set on automatic, the camera is making a bunch of decisions for you that you may not realize are important. The camera is thinking, oh, this room looks dark, I think coming up the ISO until we can see everything. Well, when you do that, it may cause a lot of graininess. It causes other things that will lower the quality of your picture. So if you, it may slow down your shutter speed, which causes blurry pictures. And the cameras are much faster these days, but it used to be that the cameras were so slow, especially the point and shoots. I would take a picture of my grandchildren, and by the time the camera took the shot, the child, all I saw was a blur of the back of their head because they had already moved. It took so long to take the shot. That's a slow shutter speed. If you have a good quality digital camera, make sure that the memory cards are actually up to speed. Not every memory card moves at the same speed. So the professional cards will say, well, I won't even attempt to tell you what it should say, because technology may have moved on, and the numbers may be different. But just make sure you have a professional speed memory card, because even if your camera is a high-speed camera, if your memory card is not a fast card, then it's going to slow down your camera anyway. So having a professional camera may not be that helpful if you have the wrong memory card in the camera. Let's see, what else can I tell you? Are there any questions? Nobody has any questions? Okay. So basically, I rely on ambient light I don't like to use flashes because, like I said, it causes a lot of other issues. And one thing you should know about flashes too is, just incidentally, the flash doesn't go, I don't think, much farther than maybe 10 feet. So if you're taking flash pictures of your child in a dance, performance, your flash is really not doing you any good. So you'll need to figure out how to increase the light coming into your camera without using a flash, because the flash just doesn't reach. Let's see. I think that wraps it up. If I think of other things, I'll post them in the thread on the video, underneath the video on Facebook. I just think that photography has become so important in our business that I have invested quite a bit in education, because there is no shortcut. I've mentioned before, there's just no shortcut to learning how to use your camera. One of the main things I did when I purchased my camera, I probably should tell you what I do have here, because you may ask what camera I have. Mine is a D3S. It's a Nikon D3S. I bought it probably 7 or 8 years ago. It's not a cheap camera. At the time, it was not Nikon's top of the line. It was the next one down. They've come out with several new cameras to replace it since then, but it has been a fantastic camera for me, and I think it is an awesome camera. Nikon, because that's what our photo club had the most of, and I just wanted to be able to get some help from my friends, my photography friends. So I couldn't decide between Nikon and Canon, and Nikon ultimately, because I figured it's what most of my friends own, and if I need help, they would be more than likely be able to help me. So I got the Nikon, the D3S. Gary has the D810, which is a good backup camera. It's much lighter weight than the D3S. The D3S is pretty heavy. It weighs about 4.5 pounds. And then when I put my big lens on it, the ones that I use for some of my more serious photos when doing photo shoots with the models outside, it probably weighs good 10 or 11 pounds with that. And there's a bracket on here that it has to have for securing it to the tripod. And so all of that adds weight. If I were to put a flash on it, which I used to do in the past, that's another pound and a half. It gets really heavy. I don't use the tripod on the photo shoots because I have to chase everybody down and we're moving locations. It just doesn't. I tried to in the very beginning to use a tripod. It was just too difficult, and so it's easier for me not to do that. I just increase the shutter speed so that I can, so it's more forgiving because of my own movement. And one other thing, when you're taking a shot, hold your breath, hold your arms in, and be as steady as possible when you're taking that shot. So I hope you've learned a little something, even though it's not embroidery. It is embroidery related because of our business. But I hope you learned a little bit of something here, and maybe we'll do something more specific in the future along these lines. But I wanted you to at least see this corner of my studio, which I absolutely love. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will upload the video there later on today. Thank you, everyone. See you soon.